Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
The content we are going to cover in this lecture will be what is machine translation and why machine translation is difficult. I will be giving a brief overview of different paradigms of machine translation, that is rule-based machine translation, statistical machine translation, example-based machine translation, and a little bit detail about neural machine translation, and also how to evaluate machine translation. Yes, so first of all, what is machine translation? So machine translation systems are basically supposed to convert a natural language text from one language to another. As we can see from this diagram that English sentence, my seminar presentation is today is converted to Meri Sangoshti Prastuti Aaj Hai target text. The main aim of machine translation systems is to preserve the meaning while converting from source language text to target language text, and the target language text should be fluent in that particular target language. So these are the two main aims of a machine translation system that it is supposed to take care of while translating from one language to another. So it's coming to history of machine translation systems. So it came into existence in 1954. The first machine translation system was proposed by IBM. Then first machine translation conference happened in 1956. And after 1972, the research of machine translation, the researchers became more interested in this machine translation research. Then the first usable machine translation system was proposed, which was to translate military manuals into Vietnamese from English, which was a complete rule-based approach. And after 1993, data-driven approaches came into existence, and statistical machine translation research gained quite a lot of attention of researchers, and IBM proposed different models to improve statistical machine translation systems, that is IBM model 1, 2, 3, and 4. And after 2013, researchers became quite interested in neural machine translation. Different languages represent meaning in quite different ways. This phenomena is known as language divergence. We are also discussed about different type of divergence in the last lecture. We will also be discussing in the next few set of slides about divergence. So the main two kinds are syntactic divergence and lexical semantic divergence. So syntactic divergence arises because of the difference in structure of the languages, and lexical semantic divergence arises because of the semantic properties of language. So we will be discussing about different kinds of these type of divergence. So first, coming to constituent order divergence, like from this example, he is waiting for him, वह उसके लिए इंतजार कर रहा है. In this example, we can see that the subject is he and in Hindi it's वह. Verb is waiting and in Hindi the verb phrase is इंतजार कर रहा है and object is him and in Hindi it's उसके. We can see that the structure of the sentence in English is subject plus verb plus object, and in Hindi it is subject plus object plus verb. So we can see that different languages have different sentence structures, which leads to constituent order divergence. And adjunction divergence is where different adjunct structures have different positions in the sentence. Like in Delhi, the capital of India has many historical buildings. The capital of India is an adjective phrase which is coming after the word Delhi. And in Hindi sentence, भारत की राजधानी दिल्ली में बहुत सी ऐतिहासिक इमारतें हैं. राजधानी दिल्ली is coming after the word. So भारत की राजधानी is coming before the word Delhi. So the position of the adjective phrase is different in both the sentences, which leads to adjunction divergence. Third type of syntactic divergence is null subject divergence. So in some languages we can omit the subject completely and still it will be a valid sentence. Like in the example जा रहा हूँ, we can the English sentence is I am going, but in Hindi translation we can say जा रहा हूँ omitting मैं, subject मैं. So this type of divergence is known as null subject divergence, where we can omit subjects in some of the sentences in some of the languages. We will be discussing some lexical semantic divergence now. The first type, sir also discussed this in yesterday, the conflational divergence, where one word leads to the translation of one word is consists of multiple words, or translation of multiple words consists of one word in the other language. From the example, he stabbed him, उसने उसे छुरे से मारा. So the stabbed word here is translated to छुरे से मारा, which is a combination of three words. This type of divergence is known as conflational divergence. In machine translation, this problem is also known as fertility. In categorical divergence, what happens is the lexical category of a word changes. Like in this example, they are competing. The competing is a verb in the English part. And in Hindi, we प्रतिस्पर्धा कर रहे हैं. It's a प्रतिस्पर्धा करना is a combination of noun words. So the lexical category of competing word is changing in the Hindi translation. This type of here the lexical category of that particular word is changing. That's why this type of divergence is known as categorical divergence. And the third type is head swapping divergence, where the logical modifier of a head is either demoted or promoted in the translation, that particular translation. So this divergence arises because of the status change of syntactic constituent of that particular word. Like in this example, the play is on. On is an adverbial phrase in English, but खेल चल रहा है. चल रहा is main verb in Hindi. So the logical modifier of the word on is promoted in Hindi. So these are some types of divergence. There exist different other types of divergence between different languages. We have discussed some of them here. Now coming towards Vacuum triangle. So this is basically representing the different levels of transfer when we are translating from source language to target language. So here we have shown three levels: lexical transfer, syntactic transfer, and semantic transfer. And interlingua is the highest unambiguous representation of that particular source sentence or source language. So for transferring from every language to every other language, you don't have to go to the highest level of unambiguity. Like when we are transferring from Hindi to Gujarati, it is not compulsory that we go to the highest unambiguous interlingual representation. We can even work at the lexical transfer level. But when we are transferring from English to Hindi, those are more distant languages, we might have to go to more unambiguous representation. So within language pairs, we have to take care of which lexical transfer level is good for that particular language pair. Now we will be discussing about different paradigms of machine translation, that is rule-based, statistical machine translation, example-based machine translation, and neural machine translation. So first, coming to rule-based machine translation. For these kind of systems, linguists and experts create rules. So the performance of these kind of systems highly depends on the experts and the linguists who are creating rules and the kind of rules they are creating. These kinds of systems can also be divided into three types. The first one is direct, where the basic set of rules is directly created to translate from input to output. And in transfer based, the transfer level is decided. Like we can transfer get the morphological representation of the source sentence, then create some set of rules to transfer it to target language, and then again get the final target sentence from the morphological representation. So the level of transfer, as we have already discussed, is dependent on the language pair. And the third type is interlingua based, which is basically transferring the source language sentences in a complete unambiguous form, and then getting the target representation of that particular source language. So here this works at the highest level of transfer. So transfer does not take much time, but the conversion from the source sentence to the unambiguous representation is a complicated task. So rule-based systems are very costly and time-consuming as all the rules are to be created by experts, and the performance is also highly dependent on the rules created by experts. So after that, with the advent of data, the data-driven approaches came into existence. So we will be discussing about example-based machine translation, where different examples are used to train the system, and then final translation for a particular test sentence is created based on the examples from the based on the phrase tables created from those set of examples. So the process majorly involves three steps, that is analysis, transfer, and generation. Analysis involves generation of phrasal fragments from the sentence. Then transfer involves finding the aligned phrases from the database of examples. So we create example database from the examples provided in the form of phrases or in the form of full sentences. And the final generation happen in the form of recombination, that is combining the aligned phrases which we are getting from the transfer phase. So this is so example-based machine translation is completely dependent on examples and the recombining it's completely based on examples. So this is also a data-driven approach, and after that probability and data, how to learn from data and some probabilistic intuition. So statistical machine translation basically tries to learn the model using parallel corpora. Parallel corpora is a sentence aligned corpora from one language to another. In statistical machine translation, the problem to solve for SMT is probability of the source sentence given the target language sentence. So we are trying to maximize this probability, which can be further divided using the Bayes rule. Probability of the source sentence multiplied by the probability of target sentence given source sentence. The probability of P here represents the language model, and probability of F given E here represents the translation model. So three important things in statistical machine translation are word translation, that is the translation of particular words, and which word is aligned to which word, and the fertility management which is arising, which needs to be done because of the constellational divergence, that one word may be leading to multiple words in the other language, or multiple words may be leading to one word in the other language. So one example for example-based machine translation, like he buys a book on machine translation. So phrasal fragments will be he buys a book on and machine translation. These are the phrasal fragments for this particular sentence. So we have already created, so there is a database which is being created using the examples provided, and from that database we are finding the aligned phrases, that is identify the aligned phrases from the database. He buys corresponds to वह खरीदता है, a book is corresponds to एक पुस्तक, and machine translation corresponds to machine अनुवाद, which is basically fetched from the database of aligned phrases, which is constructed using the example. After we get all these aligned phrases, we have to combine these phrases and reorder to get the final sentence. So recombining these phrases we have to adjust the morphology and reorder the phrases to get the final sentence. So this is all about example-based machine translation. So in the statistical machine translation, we were working at the level of words. So statistical machine translation at the level of words is more important because translation of phrases is more intuitive than the words. So phrase-based machine translation basically done in three phases. So the first phase is two-way alignment. So from we will be seeing an example where we will be showing the output of all the three stages. So two-way alignment is basically we are trying to find English to Hindi alignment at the like if the source language is English and the target language is Hindi. We will find English to Hindi alignment at the word level. We will find Hindi to English alignment at the word level too. So these two alignments is two-way alignment. Then symmetrization, that is combining both of these alignment tables, both of these alignments, and creating a single alignment table for a particular sentence, and then extension of these aligned words to phrases by following some set of rules. So the example, he is planning to make a cake in the evening. वह आज शाम को केक बनाने की योजना बना रहा है. From English to Hindi alignment, this is a table that he is aligned to वह, it is aligned to है, and planning is aligned to योजना, make is aligned to बनाने, and similarly other words. This is fetched from the phrase table, which is constructed from the partial table. Similarly, Hindi to English alignment, he is aligned to वह, and similarly all other words. The third, so this way we get two-way alignment from English to Hindi and Hindi to English. The third thing is we have to combine these alignments like in this table and then try to generate the phrase. So phrase generation should happen in a way that it should follow these three properties. Principle of coverage, that is every word must be in phrase. Principle of non-vagueness, which is no phrase should be empty. And principle of consistency, that every aligned phrase must be consistent in the sense of all words or phrases in the source and target market. So by following these set of rules, we have to learn to combine those phrases. This way the phrases this way the phrases will be generated, and the final sentence construction will be happened after reordering these set of phrases. So the phrase-based machine translation involves majorly these set of, like first we have to do two-way alignment, then we have to combine those alignment tables, then phrase generation part and reordering. So these are the four main components of a phrase-based SMT system. So after 2013, neural machine translation came into existence and gained a quite lot of attention of researchers. So what neural machine translation does is it uses neural networks to predict the translation of a sentence. It's completely based on embedding spaces. So we will be discussing about all the doubts in the end of this lecture. So you can post your doubts in the chat box. So neural machine translation are completely based on word sequence labeling, where each word is given a word embedding representation, as we have already done that on the prior segment and all other assignments. So the main architecture for neural machine translation, which is quite popular, is encoder-decoder architecture, where encoder can be an RNN, a CNN, or a transformer, and decoder similarly can be an RNN, CNN, or a transformer. Here in this lecture we will be discussing about the architecture which consists of RNN. So encoder basically tries to encode the source sentence and decoder tries to generate the target sentence. So this is the encoder-decoder architecture, where encoder consists of an RNN and decoder consists of an RNN. Here F is a source sentence and E is the target sentence. F1, F2 and Ff represents the words in the source sentence, and E0, E1, E2 represents the words in the target sentence. The lookup basically gives us an embedding vector, whether it's one hot vector or a from a set of pre-trained vectors, and this is then fed to one RNN cell. So after all this, after giving the source sentence embedding in the RNN, we get a final context vector H, which is known as context vector, which is a summary vector of the encoder. This is then fed into the decoder together with the embedding representation of the target sentences, And there is a softmax layer in the decoder, as decoder is supposed to predict the generated target function. So every RNN cell is associated with a softmax layer to predict the final target word. Softmax layer will help us in finalizing the final target word from the set of vocabulary. So here main component is HF, which is the context switch. This is the context vector, summary vector of the source content. So in this way the training process continues, and this is optimized using gradient descent, which you have already done in case of false assignments and which you are using bio. So here HF is basically the representation, but for long sentences, the representation of the starting set of words, the initial set of words may be lost. So for that, there is a concept called attention. What attention basically does is attention provides the association between encoder states and decoder states and input words with some weight. So rather than directly getting the context vector from the hidden state representation, it also associates some weights alpha 1. In this diagram, we can see that A11, A12, and A13. All these are associations which are calculated using which represents basically the importance of that particular word in the source language and the target language, which are calculated using in a particular calculated using a parameterized feed-forward neural network, which is jointly trained together with the model. So attention basically takes care of the association between that particular source and target word. Yes. So and together with the hidden state representation, so with that we don't lose the information in the initial set of words in the long sentence, and give attention to the components which requires more attention while generating the word man in this diagram. Yeah, so in this, so attention, there has been different types of attention proposed in this research. So two major types of attentions are global attention and local attention. Global attention implies that we attend to all the input words for each generated target word, and in local attention we attend to some set of words, some subset of words, either nearby words or words which are related to it, which can be decided based on the language pair. Yeah, so this is all about attention. So when we are working with NMT systems, we work majorly at word. So we are working. So till now we have discussed where we are working at the word level. But word level might not be sufficient to transfer knowledge from one language to another, especially when the language pairs are distinct. So subword level, where we want to utilize the morphological variations, compound words, and morphological segmentation in the neural machine translation system. Then the approach can be with tokenize and subword segment. Apply the subword segmentation to the source sentence. Then take source and target both sides. Then train the neural model on those particular segmented data, and train the system, and the final translation we get using after merging the subword and detokenize the translated subword segmentation. So this is like here the component of subword segmentation is completely separate from the NMT system. NMT system is trained on segmented data. Yes, but this is all about the training process. This was all about the training process of NMT. So how the inference is performed in neural machine translation. So in greedy search, what happens? So in greedy search, what happens is we select the topmost one word at each step while decoding. thus the decoding the target sentence. But in being search, what happens is we select top B words as the most likely choices at each step, and then finally we multiply the score of the partial translations and the probabilities of the word prediction, and keep highest scoring pairs for each next B. So in this way, at each step, we are basically utilizing multiple possible choices to get the next word prediction. And the final translated sentence is generated by fetching the highest probable sentence from those eligible words which were selected at each step. This is also inferences. So beam search is quite popular to do the inference in NMT systems. So till now we have discussed about different paradigms of machine translation and quite a lot of NMT, how to do the training and how to do the decoding part. So the decoding, how to do the decoding part, but all of this requires parallel data. Generation of parallel data is a very time-consuming and costly task. NMT requires a lot of parallel data to train a good NMT system. So the question comes here is, can we do it without monolingual data, or can we do it with some amount of parallel data and some amount of monolingual data? Yes. So the concept of batch translation comes into existence with this. So as NMT needs large amount of parallel data, can we utilize monolingual data to improve the performance of NMT systems? The answer is yes. So how to do that? So to do batch translation, what we need is a machine translation system in the opposite direction, that is from target language to source language, and the target language monolingual data. What we do is we generate synthetic sentence pairs using the machine translation system from target language to source language, and use that particular synthetic data to train the machine translation system from source language to target language. So this is known as batch translation. So individually this might not work good, but with some amount of parallel sentences, the performance of these times, the batch translation is proven to be helpful in case of NMT. We have discussed about batch translation here. So the question comes, how to evaluate machine translation system. So the generated target sentences should match the source sentences, but how the full match, encountering the full match is a very rare scenario. So we have to figure out some way to evaluate machine translation systems. So there are some popular methods to evaluate machine translation systems. So the one thing is manual evaluation, which is obviously a time-consuming and costly task, which can be done with a set of human experts, and which will tell whether the translated sentence is of good quality, whether it's following the proper set of grammar or not. So the two major things in evaluating machine translation systems is adequacy and fluency. Adequacy basically represents how faithful the meaning of the sentence is transferred, how adequate the translated sentence is. And fluency basically represents the acceptability of the native speech. So these are the two things which are more important and to be considered while evaluating machine translation system. So from the sentence example, मुझे भूख लग रही है is more fluent than the sentence मुझे भूखा महसूस कर रहा हूँ, मैं भूखा महसूस कर रहा हूँ. The machine translation system is supposed to generate more fluent sentence rather than not more fluent sentence. So there exist different kinds of evaluation measures which can be divided majorly into three categories, that is word phrase matching based, edit distance based, and ranking. We will be discussing about word phrase matching based evaluation measures, some of them in this lecture. So first thing is, which is most popular one, is BLEU score. The full form is bilingual evaluation under study, which basically tries to match words and phrases and gives us a measure. So the first thing which comes in mind is precision. So the number of precision basically represents the number of phrases of length n that is present in the candidate translation that are also, so reference translation is the goal translation and the candidate translation is the generated translation. So the number of words present in candidate translation that are also present in reference translation. So the ratio of these two represents the precision, but the precision here is not enough because one can produce all the words in the vocabulary and say that this is the translation, then the precision will be one, but the translation will be very low. So the thing, so here modified n-gram precision is utilized, which is basically the maximum count from reference translation is considered rather than all the counts of the reference translation, so that the length of that particular candidate translation makes an impact when we are calculating precision. And the brevity penalty is also introduced to control the length of the generated candidate translation, which is calculated using the length of the candidate translation and the length of the reference translation. Complete the average length of the reference sentence in the reference form. So one example we consider, he is a painter and the Hindi candidate translation is why is Chitraकार 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 hai. So 1 gram precision here will be 1 in spite of the fact that Chitraकार is repeated 3 times, and modified n gram precision here will be 4/6, as we already discussed that it considers the maximum count from the reference sentence. Yes. So here, so this is the most popular evaluation measure which is used to evaluate the performance of NLP system. So coming to translation edit rate, which is also an evaluation measure based on word phrase matching. So what it does is it counts the number of edit operations required to go from candidate translation to reference translation. So the number of so the edit operations eligible are insertion, deletion, substitution, and shift. So the final translation edit rate is the number of edits divided by average number of reference words. So from the example, we can see that the PA is decided to give 2 homework this week. The candidate translation is this week. The PA decided to give 2 homework. We can see that this week is shifted in the last in the reference translation, and if we do that edit in the candidate translation, we will get the exact reference translation. So the cost here is 2 units. So the number of edits required here is 2 units, which will help us in calculating the translation edit. So in this lecture, we have explored different paradigms of machine translation, why machine translation is important, what is language divergence, different types of language divergence, some details of neural machine translation, and some of evaluation measures of neural machine translation. To go in detail, you can we will be sharing the slides, and you can check the references given in the slides to go in more detail of all of these things. Yeah, so this is all for today. Today's lecture you can ask your doubts, and also we are open to taking all the evaluations.
Then maybe start with Saurav's question on what is a logical modifier.
So logical modifier is a linguistic concept where promotion and demotion of a
अच्छा, head slapping. The play is on, खेल चल रहा है. Demotion of a logical modifier. Well, the only thing I see here, the change in the English and Hindi sentences is the change in the subject object verb order, right? The play is on is basically the SVO order, subject verb object, and
so the thing here is on and chal raha hai. So on here is logical modifier of the
On
word.
is the logical modifier which is promoted in a sense because on becomes chal raha hai. Because the play is on the literal meaning can also be the other ambiguous sense where we talk about off and on the one meaning can be that it's going on. So the play is going on would have been the more complete form, but here the logical modifier on is being promoted in terms that instead of this one word there are three words in the Hindi sentence. Khel chal raha hai.
That is conflation, right? Increasing the number of words from one to more than one.
Yeah, let me explain it now. So logical modifier is basically which is modifies the information about a word in that particular sentence. So the play is on. On is a modifier here, logical modifier, which is giving some information about the word play. So on here is the adverbial phrase. But in Hindi, खेल चल रहा है. चल रहा is its main verb here. So it is promoted from adverbial phrase to चल रहा है. That is main verb.
Right. And what's the difference between simple modifier, adverbial modifier, and a logical modifier? Or are these the same?
So modifier and its category. Based on its category, its title to come.
So is there a difference between adverbial, if we call it an adverbial modifier rather than a logical modifier?
So adverbial is like a more restricted type.
Still the doubt remains, I mean. Is there a difference between modifier and a logical modifier? Why logical?
I don't know. Here it's the same.
Sorry, what did you say in the end? I didn't get it.
So it's same, there's no difference.
It's same. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, the next question.
E given F instead of PF given in statistical translation. Yeah, so in essence, so finally we are going to use PF given. That is the translation model.
So my doubt is regarding the first term. So why not we explain E hat as argmax of E with PF given E? The target given the source rather than the source given the target, because we already have the source sentence, right? So that makes more sense to write it as probability of target given the source.
But we have to determine PF given E and the language model, but we have to maximize this probability PE given E.
So initially you only have the source sentence, right? That is why you start with the probability of getting the target sentence based on the source sentence. You have to maximize that probability. But when you come to the decoding part and your language model comes into picture, then you can maximize the probability of this target sentence given the source sentence. Initially you want the maximum probability of getting a target sentence. Later, this target sentence given the source sentence. Does that sound logical, Saurabh?
So is it like a back translation?
No, this is not back translation.
Yeah, I mean then I have the same doubt, like sort of why we are maximum probability of E given F instead of F given F.
Initially you only have the source sentence, where you don't have a target sentence or any words which constitute the target sentence.
Right, so we initially have E.
You initially have E. Now you want to maximize the probability of getting a F based on that E or the source side. So initially you use a phrase table and get the words, but those words have to be in a particular order. Then you get once you get the words based on the phrase table based translation, you try and align those words in a particular order and get the probability of F given E, where the target sentence, where you try to get the probability of this particular target sentence or this particular order in which the word should be there given the first sentence.
Exactly. So we are already given E. So the PE in the second term, this PE should be 1 because we are already given E. Then why are we calculating the probability of getting MP?
No. Jyotsna?
Now this sir will be able to clarify more why we are starting with given, and we could have started with 3 as given.
I think we will take this doubt to the next lecture. Is that okay with you guys?
British, can you read what is the doubt?
Yeah. So could you explain the principle of consistency with respect to the planning example?
The principle of consistency says that aligned phrases must be consistent in the sense of all words or phrases in source and target languages. So in this phrase generation part is planning to Yojana bana raha hai. This is combined as a phrase. This is the principle of consistency, that the particular phrase boundary, the words are reordered, but all the words and their translations exist for all the words, like planning Yojana to make bana raha hai is hai. So translation of all the words is present in that phrase function. So this is principle of consistency.
Is it keeping the words together as in the initial source sentence within a particular phrase,
So
not changing the order?
within the boundary of that phrase, all the translations of that particular phrase should come.
Okay, yeah, got it. Thanks.
Adding to this, on the slide, so principle of coverage says every word must be in a phrase. So, in this, we don't have the word for the conversion for the. What exactly does it mean?
But it's coming in the phrase in the evening.
Okay, got it.
So what is the difference between E and T in the decoder?
So P is the predicted word and E is the word we are giving at training time.
Okay, so during training we don't have E, or during prediction we don't have E, right?
During training we do have E and P both.
Yeah, during training we have both, and during prediction we just have P, not E.
Mhm.
Right.
We don't have E during prediction.
So what is the difference between F and E?
F is the source sentence and E is the target sentence.
P was the target sentence.
No, F is the source. F1, F2 are the source sentence words. E1, E2 are the target sentence words. P1, E, P1, E, and all the P's are the predicted target words.
Okay, got it. Sure.
Right. Parth asked that could you explain subword NMT again?
Sorry, just one more doubt on that previous slide. So generally in the neural networks we don't give the reference target sentence as input, right? We calculate some loss from loss using the prediction and the target sentence, but we don't give them as input. So here, while prediction, what will this input correspond to? I mean, because during training that network got this input, so during prediction also some input should be there, or you set it all 0, something like that.
During prediction, it will be the next word. Like when I am giving E0 input, the predicted word will be E1. The P1 will be E1.
Oh, acha. Okay.
That way.
Now I see.
The loss will be calculated.
Yeah.
Okay, subword NMT again, please.
Yeah, for subword NMT, if we consider NMT system as a separate component, right? So the source and target both are segmented using any subword algorithm like BP or morphological representations or anything. Then the NMT system is trained on those subword representations. Then we get translations or predictions in the form of subword segmentation. Then we merge those subword segmentations and get the final output. So it is not inside an NMT system, it is a separate component before and after. Is it clear now?
Yes, yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so could you explain the diagram given on beam search slide?
Yeah, so beam search basically what it does is at each step we are fetching, we are taking topmost and topmost, maybe we are and topmost translations for each word to be predicted, and each stage we are going to do the same. and the final selection will be based on the multiplication of those probabilities. So we will get a tree kind of thing. Like we get a tree kind of thing, and the final path will be selected based on those probability values. Now, what exactly is not clear in here?
So I'm not clear regarding the diagram. So what are these in between layer? So what are we trying to predict? And the is given in blue. So are we trying to predict the translation of the here, and what is this in between layer and the final layer?
Yeah, so we are trying to predict it for this position basically. The blue thing is for this position we are trying to predict, and we get multiple translations for this position, like cat and cat. When I am predicting for this particular position, I am going to get cat and cat, these two things.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
And similarly, it will go on. Yeah.
Okay, the next question, I believe, in back translation, we need data for L2 to L1 translation. How do we get that data if we don't have data for L1 to L2 translation? So I'm guessing a lot of monolingual data being available for L2. Jyotsna explain, sorry.
Yeah, so we need some parallel data for this. If we do have 50,000 parallel sentences and a lot of monolingual data, like 1 million monolingual sentences. So we train a dummy system from L2 to L1 using those 50,000 sentences. Then we create 1 million pseudo parallel sentences and train the L1 to L2 direction together with those 50,000 sentences. So it will help us in improving over only using 50,000 parallel sentences.
Is that clear to you, or did I get in, sir?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, great. So in back translation, is L1 also the target language?
So the system we need is from L2 to L1. The final system we are training using back translation is L1 to L2.
So during back translation, when you train the when you get the pseudo parallel sentences and you train the dummy MT system, L1 becomes the target language for that period. Otherwise, eventually L2 is only the target language. Is that clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So how is back translation helping in the NMT task?
Yeah, so back translation is actually helping us to utilize a lot of available monolingual data, because we do have plenty of monolingual data but not much of parallel data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you explain BLEU again?
Yeah, so BLEU score is the most popular evaluation measure for machine translation systems. It is basically based on modified n-gram precision. We don't directly utilize n-gram precision because of what I explained about the length constraints. Like if we utilize the precision directly, these sentences will have one precision, like वह एक चित्रकार 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 है, or a person can put the whole vocabulary in that particular sentence and the precision will be one. But modified n-gram precision will try to give us a more better representation for the length constraint, and also by brevity penalty is introduced to control the length of the candidate translation. So all the extra things are introduced because of the length, to control the length of the candidate translation, together with modified n-gram precision. Yeah, is it clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. So Kaveri asks, is it possible to translate source to target language if you only have source corpora? You explained monolingual, what it exactly means?
Yeah, I got what is monolingual, but only the question is, can we transfer source to target if we have only source data like rule-based system or some other system?
That's what the machine translation system is being built for, right? You have the source side sentences, you want the target side sentences. You train the system using a small amount of parallel data you have. Maybe use back translation if you have a lot of source side sentences. Jyotsna, please get it.
Yeah, so only so we do need a small amount of parallel data. If we don't have any parallel data, there are unsupervised NMT approaches which utilize language properties and other methods like denoising, back translation, cross-lingual embeddings, all those things. So there are approaches which we have not covered here.
Yeah,
So
okay.
if you only have source side data, you go for the unsupervised NMT or unsupervised SMT for that matter.
Okay, so if like for back translation, isn't our performance dependent on the number of the back translation model that we have trained? Because the noise will percolate in the final model also.
It will, but your adequacy will improve. Your fluency might not. But if you have a lot of vocabulary which is missing, then you can add that vocabulary via those pseudo parallel sentences, right?
But if in the parallel corpora that missing vocabulary is not there, then how is it expected that
in the monolingual corpora that missing vocabulary may be there, right? From L2 to L1 where you are training a dummy MT system, you can get a lot of missing vocabulary because Jyotsna just explained a scenario when you had only 50,000 parallel sentences for L1 to L2, but you had like a million sentences from on the L2 side, which is only the monolingual corpora. So the dummy MT system might end up giving you a good amount of vocabulary. That sounds fair.
Okay.
Okay, great. I think we are up the lecture time, Jyotsna. So thank you so much for your patience, guys.